Hello crafters, my name is Brandy and I am here to tell you 10 different mistakes that I have made when I started out with resin in hopes that you will not make these mistakes and know exactly what to do to avoid them. So stick with me and I'll throw in a bonus mistake at the end. Alright, mistake number one is a big one. We did it the very first time we used resin and it is not mixing your resin properly. Please ignore the fly that's flying around right now. Just land already. So you make your first resin project and you're so excited to see the results. But once it's supposed to be dry, you try to take it out of the mold and it's just this goopy disaster of a mess. So a lot of resins, aside from UV resin, comes as a hardener and a resin, and you mix those together and you got to do a certain proportion. So usually it's 1:1 or 2:1 depending on what kind of resin. And you will see it on the label how you're supposed to mix it. You're also supposed to mix it for a certain amount of time so that you don't see these like cloudy streaks through it. Otherwise, it's just not going to harden. And like I said in the beginning, goopy disaster. That's number one. Mistake number two that I'm going to talk about is not paying attention to your working time. So each resin has an amount of time that you can work with it before it solidifies, before it cures. And there are different factors that are going to play into this as well, like the temperature of the room. So resin is best used between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it's below that temperature, then it takes a little longer to cure. If it's above that temperature, it's going to cure faster. And each resin is also a little different, so you really do need to look at the instructions that come with it to figure out how long the working time is. So one of the tricks to keeping bubbles down for your resin is to warm your resin up ahead of time. And that can decrease the working time you have. And I found that out the hard way with this. So I was trying to work with the resin and I was getting my mold ready and stuff. And I had heated the resin up a little bit, just trying to get rid of some of the bubbles because my bubble machine had broke, or my bubble remover machine had broke, that is. And next thing I know, it's solid, like solid, and it didn't even make it through the working time. So really be aware of the temperature in the room and the working time of your resin, because you can waste product, yes, and waste supplies as well. So number two. Mistake number three would be, if you're doing layers, not letting your first layer dry enough before putting on your second layer. So I was trying to do a heart with a skull and a rose, and I thought it would be really cool to just have them stuck together instead of just using like a UV resin or just a small thin layer of resin after the heart dried. I decided to, wait a couple hours after I poured the heart and then put the skull and the rose in. And the result that I got was that it sunk. So it sunk into the resin because I did not let the base layer dry enough. So that's mistake number three. And the second mistake that I made on this same project is that in a project before this one, I had used a toothpick to swirl my color in there. And you don't want the edges of a toothpick to touch your silicone molds, because I don't know if you can see it, but it leaves little scratches inside your molds. And those scratches end up on your project. I don't know if you can see that either, but there are little scratch lines when the light hits it right, you'll see the little scratches in there. So that's mistake number 4 right there, is scratching your silicone molds with something sharp like a toothpick. So be careful with your molds because you can ruin them. Okay, so mistake number 5 would be I went to add a clear layer of resin on top of this little heart and this other heart. And I had it on a little drip mat thing. But what I should have done was raised it up on something so that it could drip down. Because what happened is it formed the shape of the little drying doming mat on the bottom of it. So mistake number 5 is be aware of where your resin's drying, because it's going to stay that way. And to get rid of this, I'd have to sand it down, and it's a pain in the butt to sand. So I just left this as a little reminder of be careful where your resin goes, because I didn't realize it had gone to the bottom. Number 5. Mistake number 6. So I had made this, I have a video on it, and I thought it was super cute. I put like little fake pearls in there, and I picked really pretty colors, and I used the mica powder. But after I demolded it, I noticed that there's like little splotches all over. And that's because a viewer let me know that I didn't mix it thoroughly. And some mica powders do mix better than others, like the cheaper ones, you gotta mix a little longer, which can create more bubbles, so you got to be more aware of that. But I just didn't mix it enough, so I ended up with little splotches of the mica powder, which I like how it turned out. But at the same time, it's good to know that that shouldn't have happened. And if I do want it to happen, I know how to do it. But mistake number 6 will be not stirring your color in thoroughly. I guess that kind of goes with mistake number 1, not stirring your resin enough. But when you don't stir your color enough, your resin dries, but your color is all splotchy, or I guess it all depends on what kind of coloring you're using, but the color comes out messed up. So be aware of that. Mistake number 6. Mistake number 7 is going to be letting your resin dry on a surface that does not have what's the word? Like if you want it shiny but it comes out matte, or if you want it matte and it comes out shiny, like it just doesn't have what you were going for. So the way it comes out shiny is when you're using your mold, like whatever dries on the surface will end up being shiny. And if the mold itself is shiny, it'll come out shiny. But if the mold is matte, it'll come out matte. And you let your resin just dry on a regular silicone mat that you use for like your work surfaces, it's going to come out matte. That's what happened here. Plus I got air bubbles in there. But I was really going for a shiny, smooth, and it just comes out matte. So be aware of the surfaces that your project is drying on. It will affect whether it comes out shiny or not. And most people want the shiny when it comes to resin. So definitely be aware that the mold matters. The shiny mold makes it shiny, and trying to dry it on anything other than the shiny silicone mold comes out matte. I think we're on number 7. Yeah. So mistake number 7 is not using the right coloring for your project. So if you want the Petri effect, you use alcohol inks with a sinking white. If you want like a shimmery, you use mica powder. If you want the clear, translucent, you use alcohol inks or pigments. And it took me a while to figure out, if you want just a flat, plain color like a black or a white on the back, you use a paste or acrylic paint. And I used the wrong kind here. I was going for just a base, flat white, and I used mica powder, and I should have used a paste on this. And then I also messed up trying to put an additional layer on there. I should have like domed it. But anyways, beginner, But anyways, this was when I first started, so got my mistakes. The front turned out really pretty. Just the back's messed up. So, all right, where are we at? So mistake number 9. And if you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel, and I will come out with more material for you guys on how to start, beginner's guide to resin, because it definitely is a learning process. There are definitely lots of mistakes and lots of in and outs of like what colors you use, what resins do you use? There's just all sorts of stuff that comes with it that you don't realize whenever you first start resin. And I will come out with more videos in the beginner series that I'm making for you guys right now. So do subscribe and click that notification so you'll get notifications when those new videos do come out. All right, and we will move on to mistake number 9. And that is using the wrong resin for your project. So this one, total disaster. I was going for an underwater sea glass turtle, just super cute with the sand on the bottom, like all the cool, cute stuff, right? So I didn't know when I started that there is a different resin for deep pours. So I just used regular epoxy resin for this, and it bubbled and it distorted because it got way too hot. Resin is a chemical, so the way it hardens is by getting warm, and the deep pour resin is meant to warm slower, so it hardens a little bit slower so that you don't get too much heat, which causes this sort of stuff, like distorting on the top, bubbles all over the place. And you have to be careful because it can actually like cause fumes if you have too big of a pour, and it's very, very bad for you not using the right kind of resin. So if you want more details on what kind of resins to use for what project, I will put a link at the end of this video for the video that I made on that. And it's just more of a deep dive into which resins work best for which projects. So that's number 9. So we're coming to the end here. I appreciate you sticking with me this whole time. There's lots of mistakes, and I've made more than just this. So mistake number 10 will be whenever you're using layers, is letting your first layer dry for too long before putting your second layer on there. So if you let your first layer fully cure, it's going to leave a line, and you will have a line between your layers. So what you want to do if you're doing a project that has multiple layers is that you want to let your first layer dry for a few hours, not the full cure, and then go back after just a handful of hours and pour another layer, and then so on and so forth. So that was the mistake there. Plus I got a few bubbles in that one too, so that wasn't too good. I should have used my bubble remover machine before I poured that layer. But anyways, it did come out better than the first try. But this was the second try. So, yep, layers will happen when you let your layers dry for too long before applying another layer. All right. If you've stuck with me for this long, I appreciate you so much. I'm going to throw a bonus mistake at you. And this one is one that you're not going to be aware of until it's just way too late. And that is objects will float in resin. The reason I was talking about layers is because sometimes when you have objects that you're putting into your project, they will float or they will move. And so you want to do them by layers to get the object stuck in place before you do another layer. And so like this one went all cockeyed and floated and went sideways, and it just didn't work out for me. So on the second one I ended up pouring the resin just enough to where it hit the top of the little dragon baby's head, and then I let that cure enough before pouring the other layers. And in this one, I also did wait too long to pour the next layers because you can see little lines where the layers were poured. But I can also go and sand this, and that'll help out since it's all clear. But there's just so much that goes into making some of these projects. So you do want to be aware of that. And like I also got a little bubble in there. So you got to be aware also of the little crevices in there. They can trap bubbles. So just kind of like, go check the product, especially with the deep pour. It takes a long time to cure. So you want to go check it every few hours and make sure that there aren't any bubbles that are stuck in there. But yeah, objects floating in resin. If you have an object and you're just not quite sure if it's going to float or not, just do a little test. Put it in a mold, pour some resin in there, see if it floats. It'll save you a lot of heartache in the long run, and you'll know if you need to layer it to get it stuck down first and then pour the rest of your mold. So lots of lessons learned. I hope this helped you out where you won't make the same mistakes that I did. And hopefully it just gives you a little more knowledge of what's out there to use and how to avoid the mistakes in your projects. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.